All right, now we're looking at the thorax from the anterior view. A muscle we're going to get to later because it acts on the arm, and we're not there yet. We have this pectoralis major muscle, which is your chest muscle. But if we remove it, right, and we look deep, we can see there's a muscle here that goes to the coracoid process of the scapula, and we can see three strands of it that insert onto its origin would be onto the ribs. Well, when this muscle contracts, it's pulling on the scapula, right? And you can see all the motions it does to the scapula. It abducts it, internally rotates it, and so on. Right? That's your pectoralis major muscle. But a muscle that looks similar to it, it has many little sections to it, but it's more lateral. It's sort of under the arm, kind of the armpit area, running with the ribs here. That's called the serratus anterior. Serratus means cut or snipped, right? And it kind of looks like you have all these little snipped or cut little sections here, serratus anterior. Its action is to reach or punch forward. So if you hold your arm out in front of you, that's not serratus anterior's action, but once it's in front of you, if you kind of reach further forward or punch forward, that's the action of the serratus anterior. Now we have a large muscle kind of on that posterior thorax that also runs into the neck as well. You only see it on the left side because on the right side it's been removed to reveal deeper muscles. But if we look at this muscle that we call the trapezius, we can see, yeah, it forms most of the superficial musculature of your neck and trap area. Hate to call it trap because trap comes from the word trapezius, and its fascicles or fibers also run down your thorax, right, inserting onto the spine here, and we can see this muscle. It's like it has two sides. There's one side, there's another side, and if we wouldn't have removed it, you'd also see two sides on this side as well. So it's a four-sided shape, almost like a diamond shape. It's a trapezoid shape, and that's where this muscle gets its name, trapezius, because of its trapezoid shape. And of course, we're looking at half a trapezoid here. So this muscle will pull back on the head, and it'll also raise the shoulders up when it's contracting. Right, so shrugging the shoulders, you can say elevating the shoulders if you like. Extend the head or neck. Remember, we can use head or neck interchangeably. The neck are the joints, the cervical spine joints that are moving, and as a result, the head moves. So head or neck extension, that's bringing your head back like you're looking at the ceiling, and also pulling up on the shoulders. So shrug or elevate the shoulders. Those are the actions. With the trapezius muscle removed from the right side of this image, we reveal these muscles that insert onto the scapula, that medial border of the scapula, and originate on the spine, the thoracic spine, and some lower cervicals here. So there's a larger one that's underneath or inferior. That's called the rhomboid major, right? And then just above it, kind of running parallel with it, but not quite as wide, actually quite a bit narrower, right, is the rhomboid minor. So you have a rhomboid major and a rhomboid minor just above it. When these muscles contract, it'll pull the scapula toward the spine. And when something gets pulled toward the midline, that's called adduction. You can see right there, adduction or adduction. So these muscles right here, rhomboid major and rhomboid minor, adduct the scapula. Now we have two major muscles, prime movers. We have a pectoralis major and a deltoid. So let's start with the pectoralis major that I mentioned earlier. We see the origin is very wide. Look at all those attachment points, right, for the origin, right? But all of these, actually, this is the deltoid right here. Pectoralis minor ends right there, right? So you still have a very wide origin, but all of these fibers or fascicles will converge at one point onto the humerus, right, the arm bone, and its action would be arm or shoulder flexion and adduction. So I'm going to explain this first. Arm and shoulder are kind of like head and neck, where the shoulder is the joint, the arm is the body part that's moving because the joint is being used. So these can be used interchangeably. So the pectoralis major flexes and adducts the arm or shoulder, depending on which way you'd like to go here. And that action would be, well, bring your arms together in front of your body. Like you're touching your hands together in front of your body. That's shoulder flexion. Shoulder flexion is just raise your arm up forward and then adduction toward the midline until it meets the other arm in the center, right? Doing the same thing. So that's pectoralis major. There's its action, shoulder flexion and adduction. The deltoid muscle is also a convergent muscle. You see the origin is wide, and then these fibers, these fascicles will converge onto the, you might remember the deltoid tuberosity is just a part of the humerus, on the diaphysis of the humerus. So when this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the arm outwards like this, right? And that's called abduction. So the action of the deltoid or the shoulder muscle is shoulder abduction or arm abduction. Now we have a large muscle that takes up a lot of space posterior, right, in the back. Again, another convergent muscle, very wide origin, and all these fibers converging right onto, it disappears here, but it will converge onto the humerus, which is where it will insert, right? So when this muscle contracts, it's going to pull your arm back or your shoulder back, and which would be extension, and then towards the center, right, towards the midline of the body as well. So that's adduction. So remember the pectoralis major, we said it brings your arms together in front of the body. Well, latissimus dorsi will bring your arms together behind the body. So that's where we get this action. It's shoulder extension and adduction towards the midline. Of course, arm or shoulder could be used interchangeably. All right, your next group of muscles to know that cross the shoulder joint, the four muscles that make up the rotator cuff. All right, so know this group. These are the four muscles that make up what we call the rotator cuff. As you can imagine, they're going to rotate the shoulder. Think of the cuff as your shoulder, so rotator cuff muscles. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, not major. Teres major will be on another slide, but it's not a rotator cuff muscle. Teres minor is, and subscapularis. So let's just think of how to remember these first. Well, three of them should ring a bell. They might sound like something we've covered before. When we were covering the scapula and the skeleton, we remember there is a supraspinous fossa, an infraspinous fossa, and then on the anterior side, right behind it here, right, you have a subscapular fossa. So these muscles sit, at least 1, 2, and 4, those muscles, those three muscles sit in those fossa. So in the supraspinous fossa, you have a supraspinatus. In the infraspinous fossa, you have an infraspinatus. And then on the other side, in the subscapular fossa, you have a subscapularis. So you can see the ending hasn't changed to that US or IS in order to make it a muscle, right? And then you have this other muscle that kind of runs with the infraspinatus, and we call that the teres minor. And if you look at their actions, well, the supraspinatus doesn't really do a whole lot of rotating, but it initiates abduction. Remember the deltoid muscle, the shoulder muscle, abducts the shoulder or arm. Those can be used interchangeably here. Well, that beginning of that motion, as you start lifting your arm out towards the side, is supraspinatus, and then the deltoid will take over with shoulder abduction. The other three will rotate the shoulder, right? You can turn your shoulder sort of inwards or outwards, right? That would be your infraspinatus and teres minor, turning the shoulder outwards, or I should say rotating the shoulder outwards. That's lateral rotation, where subscapularis, the one on the other side, is going to medially rotate the shoulder, kind of turning it inwards. So there's your four rotator cuff muscles. All of them reinforce the shoulder by providing their specific actions. Still more muscles that cross the shoulder joint, so they're going to act on the shoulder or arm. Remember, we can use those terms interchangeably here. Let's do this one first because we covered teres minor. That's part of the rotator cuff. Teres major, well, you can see your rotator cuff muscles right here, and then kind of right under it is another muscle we call the teres major. There it was teres minor. Teres major is not part of the rotator cuff. Even though it does rotate the shoulder, oddly enough, it just goes to the opposite side of the humerus. You see these muscles kind of staying on this side of the humerus, so that one kind of takes the other way around. And you can see what it does. It extends, medial rotates, adducts the arm or shoulder. So why it's not a rotator cuff muscle when there's some rotation, I think it's just because of its location. But that's teres major. And of course, just to reiterate, it's not one of the 4 rotator cuff muscles. Another muscle, which has the term brachii in it, which means arm. Coraco, well, its origin is on the coracoid process of the scapula. Can't really see the scapula very well here. The coracobrachialis is kind of this little tube-like muscle that runs with these nerves and arteries right in your arm, and its action is going to be the same as the pectoralis major. Remember, the pectoralis major brings your arms together in front of your body, which is flexion and adduction of the shoulder or arm. Well, same with coracobrachialis. So it's a synergist of the pectoralis major.